that's complementary to the treatment process that can maybe be one of the keys to promote sobriety and increase or decrease relapse for this population.
Well, one of the first things you mentioned about this was the stress, and you mentioned that in a previous question about how important it is to control or deal with the underlying stressors. So, your point being that a lot of these professionals, executives, may have different stressors that would be relapse triggers, things like that, than, say, someone who works in the company if they're running the company. So that sounds like a big, critical point. One thing I'm wondering, too, is if there's a worker in a company who may have a problem, an addiction problem, there may be coworkers who may feel very comfortable on par with that person, say, hey, you need to get some help, or the boss comes around and says you need to get help. But if you are the boss or the professional, and in most of the jobs you mentioned, they're often the boss, is it more difficult for sort of employees, for lack of a better word, subordinates, to come to the boss and say you need help? I mean, have you seen that in your practice? That's one of the barriers?
That's exactly one of the barriers. The work environment is one of the aspects of the work environment is power and influence. And generally, a subordinate doesn't confront somebody in a position of greater power than them or influence. It's sort of socially inappropriate, and it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense if one is worried about one's position or job. So that definitely enters into things, and if there's not somebody around to remind someone in a position of power that they're human too, and they're subject to the same kinds of ills anybody else is, and there often isn't. When the more someone rises in an organization, it's literally lonely at the top. The less one has peers, and the less one has someone in a co-occurring position that can confront them. So that power differential often insulates somebody at the top. People in the entertainment industry, there's lots of people often around them who don't want to cater to them and want to keep them happy. Telling them that they've got an alcohol or drug problem and they need help could be a very unpopular thing to do.
It's very easy for them, the entertainer, to say no, it's not.
Exactly. So we see that dynamic, and it's part of being a human being. It's part of it's really a social dynamic that can impede the identification process and the getting help process for somebody who's in a powerful or very visible, influential position.
So it sounds like a lot of issues with that. And actually, if we could put up one of the graphics. First, there's a graphic about, just to remind viewers of who you are, Dave. There's a graphic just to give you the quick background of the authors of this book, Dr. David O'Connell and Dr. Deborah Bovino. I think we have that coming up. And again, just, I'm proud of the fact that certainly Dr. Bovino, I work with at Reading Hospital very closely. And, that these are people right in our area. And if we could put the next graphic up, just which talks a little bit about the table of contents, just to show some of the things in the book. And I just want to talk for the few minutes about some of these. You talk about things like managing feelings and moods and dealing with conflict and things like that. Talk a little bit about when you say conflict and recovery. I mean, we've talked a few minutes about how so important it is to deal with the underlying stressors. What is conflict, moods? How do they factor into recovery?
Well, these are things that we all have to deal with on a daily basis. I mean, we get people together, family, anybody, there's eventually going to be conflict. And someone who's in the midst of an addiction has conflict within themselves, they're spiritually conflicted, emotionally conflicted, then they get into recovery, and they may have hurt a lot of people and caused a lot of problems, and now they want to do something about it. But conflicts and old wounds don't just go away like that. And we find that especially in the first year of recovery, that learning how to do things that one hasn't done in a long time, which is assertively, maturely face a conflict and manage it, problem solve, do all sorts of things that one couldn't do under the influence of alcohol and drugs, is an important task.
It sounds related to, in Alcoholics Anonymous, one of their tasks is making amends and things like that. Is it related to that? Or is that a different concept?
Well, I think that making amends, asking for forgiveness, is two major components to a conflict management process. And I think that the 12 steps are brilliant, and giving forgiveness to someone is very freeing, and getting forgiveness and having the debt canceled, so to speak, allows one to move on and to grow and to develop. And until that happens, all of us are kind of stuck, whether we're in an addiction or not, if we're in a situation where there's an ongoing conflict that hasn't resolved. And some conflicts are never resolved. And some conflicts are very hard to resolve, but certainly managing conflict, managing changes in moods. Oftentimes, an addict or an alcoholic will use alcohol or drugs as a mood manager. If they're feeling down, they'll take a drug, or if they're feeling up, they'll take a drug. Or
so that's why it's so critical to manage these feelings.
Exactly, and do it in a natural way, the way the rest of us do.
And what about, in your book, you talk about tasks, like 10 tasks to recovery. What are some of these, are these tasks that people can physically do, or is it more of a road to getting there? What's the concept of some of those?
The 10 tasks of recovery actually comes in the final chapter of the book, which is a kind of Addictions 101 capsule summary of what somebody might learn in an inpatient environment. One of the things that Dr. Bavino and I wanted to do is we realized when somebody leaves a treatment center, it would be nice to have a kind of workbook for the first year and to deal with all the challenges of the first year of recovery, and also to be reminded of everything that one has learned over the intense period of 30 days, or if it's intensive outpatient over the period of a couple of weeks. That's often easy to forget. So the book is a resource for a lot of the tasks and a lot of the treatment plans that go on in a treatment center. And it would be along the lines of what we just talked about. There's spiritual tasks of recovery, there's interpersonal tasks of recovery, there's how to reconfigure one's life during recovery, dealing with emergent feelings, coping in different ways. There's a whole host of modifications that have to be made, and we identified 10 chief ones, or 10 ones that are of paramount importance, and have them available to the reader of the book, so they can go back to it, read it over again, and
sort of recap some of the things they learned in getting to recovery, just to remind them.
Exactly.
That's great. And unfortunately, we're just about out of time. As always, we just scratched the surface.
That went quickly. I can't believe it.
It did. And I didn't get to have my questions, but it's okay. But I want to remind viewers that this is such a critical topic. And again, if we could put the graphic up, because I think it's such an important topic. The book is called Managing Your Recovery from Addiction. The author is Dr. David O'Connell. And again, thanks so much for being on the show tonight, Dave. And Dr. Deborah Bavino, both local psychologists. If you're interested, you can get the book through Hayworth Press. That's hayworthpress.com. And such a critical topic. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And thanks, viewers, and we'll see you next time on Medicine in the News.
Thank you.